Hey you guys, Excitebike 64 recently came to the Nintendo Switch online, like Nintendo 64 application. So me and my wife, we took some time to play this game to give it a shot. Mainly, I just wanted to see how well this game held up in 2023. A lot of 64 games have not aged well. They aged very, very poorly as it was really early 3D. And Excitebike 64 wasn't a game I had huge nostalgia for. It was a game that I played a little bit, I dabbled in it, but I didn't really ever like raved about it or cared about it too much. So I decided, hey, give it a shot. Maybe my more matured, seasoned gamer brain can like this game. And even though I found some fun in it towards the end of us playing it, it definitely took some getting used to the controls, getting used to the graphics again. But one of the things that it made me realize is how much we hold 64 in high regards, but how very few titles the 64 actually has that are like those amazing, groundbreaking games. People are always talking about Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, the Banjo games, Super Mario 64, the big heavy hitter games. But a lot of people don't really talk about the smaller games, the Pilot Wings, the Excite Bikes. So I kind of just wanted to go over like my thoughts on not just Excitebike 64 because that game in its own is rough around the edges, but the 64 and how rough around the edges 64 is, and how we might have like rose tinted goggles. We might perceive it in a way that is just very different than what the actual reality is. Again, when people think of like the main big like super strong Nintendo consoles, N64 is definitely on like a top 5 if not top 3 list. Things like the Switch is definitely up there. Things like the Super Nintendo is definitely up there. And 64 I think is a weird one to kind of place in the top. I think just because again it's early 3D gaming, so it is very rough. I think whenever people look at like consoles in that era, no one is saying PlayStation 1 is better than PlayStation 2, 3, 4, or 5 even. Some people might, but a lot of people would definitely say games got better and the PlayStation got better as a console. But a lot of people don't really say that about Nintendo 64. And again, I think it is because games like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time hold up well in our heads, and memories, they're one of the greatest games of all time. But since recent memory, if you try to go back to these games, they definitely do not play well. Not to mention they lack that modern sensibility that a lot of people can never go back to, right? A lot of people born at a certain like year will never be able to go back to that early 3D gaming. Even me, someone who grew up with a lot of that early 3D gaming, I played the N64 tons as a child. It is so hard for me to go back to a lot of these games. They aged poorly, camera angles are bad, textures are wonky, it's that early like poly look that a lot of people see like charm in it, and even I see some charm in it. But the thing about me is the fact that I'm starting to realize that the N64 isn't the king of kings that I think a lot of people really held it up to be. Despite some of the super strong titles, but really when you look at all the titles that it has, majority of them aren't really like the big bangers like Super Mario 64. They definitely have a lot of filler, a lot of Excitebike 64s that maybe we should just start reconsidering 64 as being like the main super strong Nintendo console. It definitely didn't age as well as the Super Nintendo or like the GameCube or even the Wii at times. Just to be clear, I'm in no way saying that Excitebike 64 is a terrible game. It's just one of those games that, unless you have like really core memories with Excitebike 64, it's hard to justify saying I'm gonna play like a session of Excitebike 64, specifically in like today's gaming landscape where we have so many options to play so many different games. I couldn't fathom any of my like brothers or my friends saying, "Hey, Excitebike 64, we're on it today," And again, unless you have those core memories with the game, it just doesn't do much. Which also brings me to the next thing, which is like N64 application on Nintendo Switch is almost tapped out, really. I mean, it's only been like a year, and all the games that are on N64 are kind of the big ones that you kind of expect them to have. Things like the Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time. The main games that you kind of need are there. What comes next? we kind of just get this next like group of filler games, and it's been hard for me to say like, yeah, the N64 application is gonna get, you know, some of the bigger titles, things that I would like them to get, like Conquer, things that'll make my day. I just see it really hard moving forward for the N64 application, just because again, there's not much titles missing. You know, we have like another James Bond game, but you know, it was a mess to even get GoldenEye on there. So I can't imagine them putting the second James Bond game on there. Banjo and Kazooie is on there. Will Microsoft allow Rare to put Banjo and Tooie on there? And Conquer definitely again won't be going there because of the M rating. So again, there's a lot of, you know, nostalgia built up around the N64 that I just think doesn't really hold up anymore in 2023. And I think it is safe to say and fair to say that the N64 again is just not the console a lot of us remember it being, when you can really only like point out 10 games that are like the most amazing games ever, and then everything else is kind of like, I don't want to keep saying filler because that's disrespectful to a lot of these developers and a lot of these titles. I just want to say they're not the pinnacle, they're not the creme of the crop of like gaming in all of history. Yeah, even though my memories are amazing with the N64, playing games like Mario Kart 64, Conquer, GoldenEye, a lot of these games that I have so much love for and so much nostalgia, and for me, I can still go back to play like those main games that I don't want to say define my childhood, but were a huge part of my childhood growing up, and were a huge part of tons of people's childhoods. But I think a lot of people need to like remove the rose tinted goggles and stop saying N64 is the cream of the crop. N64 is, you know, pinnacle peak gaming, because it's not, unfortunately. Sure, you can select a couple titles saying that these are the best, but a lot of those games I don't think hold up in 2023. Even when I look at Mario Kart, you know, 64, which is one of my favorite games on the 64, I never find myself going back to it, especially now that I just play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe all the time with, you know, 10 times more tracks, X times more characters, tons more options of how to play the game. I just don't see myself ever going back to a lot of 64 titles unless it's like the Super Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time. Anyways, you guys, these are my final thoughts on the N64, Excitebike 64. Let me know down below if you guys like it, disagree, etc. I'm sorry if the Nintendo 64 is your favorite console of all time. I just no longer can put it in my like top echelon of consoles, and it's kind of just gonna be like more nostalgia based than it is actually like a console I want to go back and revisit as often as, say, the PS2 or the Super Nintendo. Yeah, again, like this video if you guys like this video, dislike it if you dislike it. I can't stop you, and just remember to go out there, play games, have fun. I'll see you guys on the next video.